This is the third take because I went off on a tangent on the second one and completely went out on the first. But just sum up, doing the View Askeweniverse by Kevin Smith. Was first introduced to it from the show VH1 show I Love the 90s with the characters of Jay and Silent Bob. Thought they were funny. Then I saw the movie Mallrats. Saw Jay and Silent Bob were in Mallrats. So I definitely paid attention. Enjoyed it. Thought it was a great, funny movie. And then eventually I started seeing the other movies in the series. Not necessarily in order, though. Eventually I did watch them in order. And I now own all of them, including the most recent one, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. And though I didn't see them in order, I am going to review them in order. And we're going to start with Indie Darling Clerks. Now, Clerks is a movie that it's one of those slow burns, I think. You start off thinking you're watching a typical movie, but by the end of it, things go pretty crazy. But I do think it's really good, really well made, especially since it was his first movie, and it was financed mostly by him taking out huge credit card debt, which he was able to pay off. But I'm scared to run up my debt on just one low amount credit card. But with him, he followed his dream, and he made a movie that's still loved by a lot of the fans and is considered one of the best ones in the series. That's not exactly a glowing review of someone's career when it's like, oh, that first one was one of the best ones. He does have others, and some that I think are even better than Clerks later on. But Clerks is one of those films that's like, it's kind of hard to top, and he didn't follow it up with a sequel, thank goodness, not until years later. Simply a movie that takes place in the same universe, same, place and time. But focus on Clerks is the idea is basically you have these two buddies who one works in a store and a convenience store, and right next door his buddy works at a video store. I miss video stores. God, I miss video stores. Anyway, the convenience store clerk's name is Dante, and he's the protagonist, and he's kind of the guy we're supposed to relate to. He is vaguely based on Kevin Smith, who actually worked in the convenience store that they filmed in. That's why they were. In fact, that's kind of how he was able to film there. And a lot of the experiences of working at a convenience store that you see in it was based on his own experiences. And having worked in a convenience store setting and retail in general, this movie hits a little close to home at times, but it is very funny and entertaining. Dante is kind of the, type that does what he thinks he's supposed to do, but, doesn't like it and complains about it, but instead of taking a stand or being like, no, I'm going to, do things my way, he usually caves and buckles because he wants convenience. He wants to take the more easier route. It's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of Scott Pilgrim. For those who haven't seen Scott Pilgrim or read the books, Scott Pilgrim is the protagonist of his story, and while he's supposed to be the guy we root for, the hero, you kind of think he's kind of an ass, And Dante is kind of this guy that he whines and complains about so much stuff, but never really does anything about it. Then you have his buddy Randall, who just doesn't care at all. Randall likes his life, but he complains too, but not because of his life, but because of, but because basically he just doesn't like people. He's not a people person, but he's, strangely enough, very outgoing despite not being a people person. He's very rude to the customers in their face, very, blasé about everything, which makes him kind of more likable because he's an ass, but he knows it and he doesn't care. He's at least being honest about it. He's like, this is who I am, Fair enough. Still would never want to, go to the video store he works at, but I respect someone who, is at least honest about who they are as a person. Um, but as I said, Dante, and a running joke throughout the whole series starts in this movie where Dante has been called into work on a day that he was supposed to have off. And that's kind of the seed of the movie of him just being like, I'm not even supposed to be here today, and he's mad. His ex is getting married, and he thought he had a chance to get back with his ex, but here's where, like I said, the character's kind of an ass. He already has a new girlfriend, one that's very much the way she's portrayed in the film. Like, why do you want the ex that hurt you, cheated on you, and if you got this perfectly good girl who, she's not unattractive, she's very sweet, brings him lunch, is very supportive of him, but because he still, has his, this thing for his ex, he kind of looks for excuses to kind of look at her negatively so he can, justify his, desires for his ex. And so once again, not the most likable protagonist, but he still has moments of relatability because, once again, I've worked in a convenience store, so that aspect I can relate to him on, the same as Randall. And the film is kind of showing what happens in a typical day with slight, as the film progresses, it starts getting to where it turns out to be not your typical average day for them. Dante keeps complaining about things, and Randall, kind of is like, well, if you're going to complain about it, why not do something, And while still kind of for his own means, Randall convinces, excuse me, Randall convinces Dante into doing things. Dante is like, no, we shouldn't do that, but, at the same time, he still does it. It's one of those things where Randall doesn't twist his arm that much. Randall's like, why don't we do this? And Dante's like, no. And Randall's just like, doesn't really offer much to, convince Dante to break the rules, but Dante still does it. Once again, it's sort of like, you're the one making these decisions. But these decisions usually end in catastrophes, including closing the store to play hockey on top of the roof, taking off customers for understandably. Excuse me. Another incident is they find out a close former friend of theirs died, and they try to go to the funeral, but and they never got to actually film the scene. But if you ever get the DVD, check out the deleted scene on why they got kicked out of the funeral. They do briefly mention it, why they were chased out of the funeral, and they do film that scene of them leaving, them going to the funeral and then being chased out of the funeral. But in a long, as the day goes on, there's these two characters who I mentioned, Jay and Silent Bob. The character Jay is based on the actor playing him, Jason Mewes, as a 13-year-old. And very loud, very abrasive, very, mature language, to put it nicely. And they're just there to, sell pot, basically. They're pot dealers. And Silent Bob's kind of the muscle, and played by the director, Kevin Smith. And they kind of just hang out around the store, selling pot. That's pretty much their thing. They have a few bits. I enjoy them, and they're kind of the glue that holds the Askeweniverse together. But Dante's back in the store. His ex comes by and reveals, oh, I'm not actually getting married. My mom put that in there because she wants me to marry that guy. Which has Dante thinking, oh, hey, well then maybe you and I can get together. And she's kind of considering it, though it's clear that she's going to pretty much do the same bullshit to him that she did before, which once again shows Dante is kind of an idiot. But yeah, they kind of make plans, and then she kind of goes off. I'm not going to spoil it. I do think people should watch this movie, but there is a disturbing situation that occurs in her case that happens towards the end of the film. But let's just say him and her don't end up together, but despite them not actually going through with it, Randall hearing about how much Dante complains about his life and how he doesn't feel like there's a future for him and his girlfriend, lets the girlfriend know. And as that's happening, Dante is learning a lesson and learns it from Silent Bob. I have a great girlfriend. Why am I trying to go for my ex who cheated on me when I have a perfectly good girlfriend? When Randall revealed that Dante was no longer into his girlfriend to the girlfriend, it was done out of look, you both could do better kind of thing, trying to help, which is kind of weird for him. But of course, the one time he does, it's when it probably shouldn't. But it's not really his fault. Once again, Dante's the one who's been complaining and trying to, being an ass. So I don't blame Randall for the breakup. When Dante sees her and she breaks up with him, and I would too after all that crap. But Dante takes all of his anger and frustration out on Randall, and Randall kind of finally is snaps him out of it and makes him realize that he's kind of been the douchebag this whole time. And it's a good movie. It's definitely, like I said, it's kind of a build-up kind of film. It starts off a little slow, but it is worth the watch. But don't expect it to be right out the gate. And unfortunately, a lot of movies don't do the slow burn anymore. The idea is people want everything to happen right then and there. I don't like films that do that. I prefer a film with a slow build because it makes what happens towards the end all the more impactful. And but especially like horror films, a lot of those do that. We're trying to hold your attention, and I get it. A lot of the younger generation, they don't have the attention span to wait the slow burn out. But I grew up on classics, so I'm used to the slow burn. I appreciate the slow burn, and Clerks is definitely a slow burn in the best way possible. Now, instead of a sequel, what Kevin Smith did next was Mallrats, which takes place in the same universe, the same town as Clerks, and there are references to the characters from Clerks. But Mallrats has two protagonists this time. No, not Jay and Silent Bob, though they are in the movie, and like I said, they're the glue that holds the franchise together. But the two main characters are these two guys who both get broken up with on the same day by their girlfriends. You have, and it's, but you have TS, who's kind of like the most normal of the two, kind of the typical person, who is planning to propose to his girlfriend on a trip to Florida with her. But her father kind of knows that's what he was kind of doing. Her father hates him. So TS has been kind of fumbled because she's been asked by her father to help him out with this TV show that's a dating game show. It's kind of obvious what he's doing, but she refuses to acknowledge that her father is trying to break them up and thinks TS is just being possessive, which would be stupid except for the fact that he is kind of possessive. The very thing she's kind of accusing him of, he doesn't really refute too well. And so I think she is kind of wrong for not realizing how obvious her father's plan is. But I do think she does have a point that TS is a little possessive and doesn't really argue against it too well. So that's why they break up. Brody and his girlfriend. Brody is a comic book fan, video gamer, very, pop culture savvy guy. played by Jason Lee, by the way, aka Syndrome, Dave from the Chipmunk movies. It's weird to see him as a young person in this movie because you're used to seeing him from like My Name Is Earl or something. But he plays this character Brody who is a little out there, but his girlfriend breaks up with him because he really didn't have any motivation in life and doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. And same thing with their relationship. He doesn't want to introduce her to his mother, and he kind of just assumes that they will just keep going the way they're going, which is not appealing to her, and understandably breaks up with him. So they decide to kind of mourn their losses, or in Brody's case, get over it by going to the mall. But when they get to the mall, which is, the main setting of this movie, obviously, they find out that game show is being filmed at the mall. So TS and Brody enlist the help of Jay and Silent Bob to help disrupt the game show. So TS has a chance to try and get back with his girlfriend. And Brody finds out that his girlfriend not only left him, but has hooked up with Ben Affleck's character, Shannon Hamilton, who has this weird obsessive hate for Brody, even before dating Brody's ex. And when he finds out that Shannon is not only a douchebag that just gets the girls on the rebound, but also does unspeakable acts with them, he decides to actually man up and fight for his girl eventually. It takes a cameo from Stan Lee to help that progress, but it's still very good movie, very entertaining. If you like, 90s culture, if you like rooting for underdogs, this is a great film, and it's very funny. And T.S.'s girlfriend's father is played by... I hadn't seen Guardians of the Galaxy, forgive me, but the blue guy from Guardians of the Galaxy that's like Star-Lord's father figure, he plays the main antagonist of Mallrats, and he is hilarious. I mainly know him for a slasher film called Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, where he is really creepy. And it's so funny to see someone who did such a good job in such a creepy role play such a funny role. It's still a villainous role, so he doesn't have, so he can still be a menacing villain, but still be pretty funny. So it is a pretty funny movie. If you're looking for straight up good 90s comedy, Mallrats is the one for you. It's a little faster paced than Clerks, a little more dynamic, a little more energy, a lot more budget. But I recommend Mallrats. Chasing Amy, the third film in the Askeweniverse. This is the one that critics love. It's the one time where everybody seemed to like Kevin Smith for once. Usually, there's tons of Kevin Smith fans, myself included, but a lot of times his films get bashed on by one group or another. But Chasing Amy tends to be well-liked, though lesbians kind of roll their eyes to it because of the premise of the movie. Understandable. And Kevin likes to joke that this was his first science fiction movie, because you ask any lesbian, yeah, that ain't happening. But I do have a theory about Chasing Amy that I don't think was intended, but could be assumed. In it, the main characters include Ben Affleck, not playing the character from Mallrats, thank God. But Ben Affleck plays a... and I have a terrible memory, forgive me, but Ben Affleck plays a comic book writer named Holden McNeil, and Jason Lee, also playing a different character in this movie, plays the inker Banky. Best friends, and they create a comic book based on Jay and Silent Bob called Bluntman and Chronic that has some success in the world of View Askew. And at this comic convention, Holden falls for but he falls for this girl by the name of, Alyssa Jones. I am terrible with names, and I love these characters, but sometimes my brain just doesn't want to click. But Alyssa Jones, who does these really well-respected comics, but there's just one problem with him falling in love with her. She's a lesbian, supposedly. Though my theory is she hasn't confirmed that. I think she's still questioning, and she thought she knew, but by the end of the movie, I think she's confirmed what she is. I'm not going to say what, because I kind of want people to watch these movies, but she does kind of confirm things for herself towards the end of the film. But her feelings get complicated because she finds herself falling in love with him back, and Banky is confused by it all because he's like everyone else in the world. She's a lesbian. It's not going to work out. And he kind of tries to point that out, and it's clear he's actually becomes jealous of the relationship. And oh, my landlord walked by. But anyway, it's clear he's jealous of the relationship, and they kind of work, and then the three of them kind of have to work through these issues that pop up with, sexuality, friendship, and all that. And it's a very deep movie. It's deeper than Clerks and Mallrats. And I think that's what drew critics to actually like the film, because it's not quite the comedy fest that Mallrats was. It's a little more personal. It's a little more deeper. It brings up a lot of questions about this ideas of sexuality and what is appropriate, what isn't, standards, and what is normal, if that is a thing. And it's really well made too. It's very deep. Yes, Jay and Silent Bob are in it briefly, but some of Silent Bob's best moments are in that one little bit in this movie. So I definitely recommend chasing it. I recommend all these movies pretty much, but if you're wanting something deeper and something that really thought-provoking, Chasing Amy is definitely a good one to go with. Speaking of thought-provoking, and Dogma is, if you can't have a sense of humor about religion in general, don't watch Dogma. Please don't. But if you can have a sense of humor about it, have an open mind, and look beyond the jokes and nonsense and look deeper into the questions this film asks, it's actually a very deep film, but the comedy sometimes kind of gets in the way of the message a little bit. But the message, I think, is really good. But the comedy is really, it's really out there. But I love it. I think it's hilarious. Alan Rickman, a.k.a. Professor Snape, plays the voice of God. Very well, by the way, and hilarious. The movie is about a woman named Bethany who was raised Catholic but has kind of lost her faith, who is suddenly charged out of nowhere with a sacred quest by the voice of God to stop two angels played by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck from trying to re-enter heaven, because if they succeed in re-entering heaven, they will undo existence due to, a little loophole in the rules. Because, you prove God wrong, and God can never be wrong, you will unmake existence. But it's a really funny movie. It's got Chris Rock, Selma Hayek. It's Jay and Silent Bob are two prophets sent to help her without realizing that's what they are. George Carlin as a cardinal. Just that alone, I would watch the movie for that just alone, but it's a funny movie. But if you are easily offended and you take a movie with a rubber poop monster seriously, you shouldn't watch the movie. It is a comedy. It is not meant to be taken too seriously. It has a good message in it, but it is a comedy. Catholics went nuts when this movie came out, and not in the good way. And the outcry was so bad that Kevin's like, I need to do something that doesn't have any serious topics at all. So he moved on to the next film. The next film, like I said, Kevin's trying to go to just straight up comedy. He doesn't want to do anything serious or deep because Dogma had such a rough time with the blowback from Dogma, so he decided to go with a straight up full blown comedy, just something just for laughs. And who better do that with his characters Jay and Silent Bob getting their own movie? Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back. If it looks like a typical stupid stoner comedy, it is. But I like stoner comedies. They make me laugh. I enjoy them. They have, humor I can enjoy, and I've always been a fan of Jay and Silent Bob is why I got into these movies. Them having their own movie, I enjoyed it, and it was exactly... See, that's the thing. A lot of people will go into a movie and be like, well, that was terrible. I don't like stoner comedies. Then why'd you go watch a stoner comedy? If you don't like horror films, don't watch a horror film. If you don't... and so I always hate people going into a movie complaining that it was exactly what it advertised to be. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back advertised itself as a stupid stoner comedy. It is, and it is great. It is exactly what I expected. It is exactly what it advertised itself, and I enjoyed it for that. Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, like I said, focus on Jay and Silent Bob, but it does have callbacks and connections to all the previous films, with cameos from prior cast members as different characters, or sometimes the same characters. You kind of get to catch up on the characters from the previous movie, see what they're kind of doing at the moment. And the main premise is Jay and Silent Bob's comic book characters, Blunt Man and Chronic, are getting a movie made. Jay and Silent Bob did not get any money from that, and they're supposed to, because they were getting money from the comic books for likeness. Since it's based on them, they get a little cut of the money from the comic book. However, they have not received any money for it, so at first their goal is to get money for the movie being made. But then they find out that even before the movie's being made, that on the internet, which they are introduced to the internet in this film, they find out on the internet that before the movie even is released, people are bashing the film, particularly the characters that are based on them, which they take personally. And so they realize that if there's no movie, people aren't going to be able to make fun of them, because there's no movie to make fun of. At least that's their logic. So they decide to go to Hollywood and forget getting the money. No, they're going to go and try and stop the movie being made. And they go on this long road trip, pretty much to stop the movie. That's pretty much it. And just hijinks ensue, and it's pretty funny. It's got great cameos, and there's not much to say without spoiling a lot of good jokes. So if you really just want something kind of to turn your brain off and just laugh, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back. Now, this is a film that even fans are kind of iffy about, even though, once again, I do enjoy it, though there is one scene where I'm like, I get the reasoning behind it, but it's still kind of like, I'll still watch the movie, I'll still laugh, but it's a scene where I'm almost tempted to skip it, but most of the time I don't. It's almost like an endurance test. But Clerks II, the first actual sequel that Kevin Smith has made. But Dante and Randall are back, and then they're working in a new environment. I'm not going to say why they're working in a new environment, which is a fast food place, because that would spoil the beginning, and definitely don't want to spoil that for you. But they're working in a new environment, a fast food place. And Jay and Silent Bob are hanging out again. Basically, things tended to not quite work out the way Dante was hoping they'd work out at the end of Clerks. He's kind of still doing the same thing, just now in a fast food place. Though he finally has a fiancée, played by Kevin Smith's real life wife, um, and he's getting ready to move to Florida with her and work for her father in a very cushy job, and he's acting happy about it, but you can tell, especially when he talks to certain other characters, he's not entirely crazy about leaving his home in New Jersey and his friends and stuff. He pretends he's excited about leaving, but there's something that kind of holds him back. I don't want to say why because it would spoil part of the plot, but it is his last day there, and the movie is kind of showing how he had on what's really changed about him, which is not much, and how age has affected Randall, a guy who pretends to not be affected by anything, starts showing signs of being affected by the fact that he is getting older and that his best friend is moving away. And I actually like that storyline. I like the storyline. I appreciate where they go with it. Majority of the humor is the typical, Kevin Smith humor. So if you have gotten used to and enjoy Kevin Smith's humor like I have, it's there. There is a scene towards the end which I feel like calls back to Clerks in the sense that towards the end of Clerks, there's a really messed up scene. Not going to spoil for either movies, but there's a really messed up scene that I'm like, God, you do not expect that in this movie. Clerks II, they do this time give you more of a warning of what you're about to witness. I mean, they don't show it, but you're given clues about what's going to happen, but then there's a twist that makes it even more outrageous and insane and messed up. But it is just... If you're very sensitive about certain things, you may want to, I still recommend the movie, but you may want to skip that scene. And like I said, they do kind of give you a heads up about it. You do start getting an idea when it's about to happen, so you do have a chance to maybe fast forward a little bit or skip the scene because it's not easy. But Clerks 2, while not as good as Clerks, I didn't expect it to be. And that's the thing. I know it's not good to go into a movie with lowered expectations, but it's a sequel to Clerks that was made like over a decade after the first one. I didn't expect it to be better. And it's not really worse. It's just not quite there. It's like this is more in line with Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back humor, but the storytelling of Clerks. It's kind of a fusion of Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back. It's kind of a fusion of that. It takes the storytelling of Clerks and mixes it with the humor of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And it's a okay mix, but if you ask I've noticed a lot of fans are not crazy about Clerks 2. And I think it's because they took the storytelling and mixed it with the humor of a different film. Even though it's in the same universe and with the same characters, the two didn't mix as well as it did the first time because you only got a little bit of the Jay and Silent Bob humor in the first movie. You got a lot more of it in Clerks 2. Even if it's not Jay and Silent Bob, it is that humor that you see in the Strikes in their solo film. But Clerks 2, I still recommend, but it is something you kind of need to go in with a bit of a warning. Kevin Smith, it took a while for him to come back to the Askeweniverse. He did a lot of different stuff. He did Red State, which was well received, and it's a good movie. It's messed up as hell, but it was interesting. It wasn't really a comedy, so it was different. He did Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Pretty funny. Not surprising. It was definitely, and it was enjoyable. I mean, it was enjoyable, but then he started making he made Tusk. If you don't know anything about Tusk, just read the Wikipedia page on it, and then you can understand why I don't really know what I can say about Tusk. I liked it, but it is not what you expect from Kevin Smith, which kind of is what makes it work for me. Then you have kind of a follow up to Tusk with Yoga Hosers, which it's better than Cop Out. And there are aspects I like about it, but even Kevin Smith is like, I didn't want Yoga Hosers to be like the last movie ever made. And that's why he did Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. He had almost died of a heart attack, which led him to adopting a healthier lifestyle and also kind of reassessing, his situation in life. And he was determined to at least make one more movie, one that he could be a little more proud of than Yoga Hosers. Even though Yoga Hosers, like I said, there's stuff I like in it, and it's not horrible. It's definitely not his best work though. So I understand his reasoning. And Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is like the first Jay and Silent Bob film. It kind of takes everything that's happened before and references it, brings back characters and cameos and stuff, and it makes fun of remakes and reboots while itself being a reboot. But it does some interesting stuff. A lot of things that happen with the character of Jay mirrored what was going on with Jason Mewes in his actual life, because the character is based on his 13-year-old self. Even in later films, including this one, it's still based on his teenage self, even though he's matured and grown up. The character, not so much, but in this film, the character actually starts to. But I don't want to give, once again, it's like, I don't want to give away too many plot details, but he has a reason to start trying to be more mature and actually start growing up. But in this movie, it's been decided that Hollywood is going to make a reboot of the Blunt Man and Chronic movie, which in universe is a horrible movie. Even Jay and Silent Bob did not like that movie. But the thing is, Hollywood does not want to pay up for it. So they tricked Jay and Silent Bob into giving up their identities, their likeness. So they have the idea, well, if we stop them from making the reboot of the movie, we can get our names back. Jay logic there. So they once again go on a cross-country trip to Hollywood to stop the movie from being made. And if you like Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, you'll like Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. It's not the exact same movie, but the premise is the same. But I like the humor and the breaking fourth wall jokes in it. I like the fact that they know what they're doing, and they know how cliched a lot of it is, and they have fun with that. They make jokes of it. I like how they take certain things from their own personal lives and kind of put it in the movie. Part of him living a healthier diet, Kevin Smith became a vegan. Silent Bob is now vegan. And that actually is an aspect of the film, and actually sets up a pretty funny joke in my opinion. And once again, it is, like I said, kind of mirrors things that were going on in Jason Mewes' life. The character Jay starts having going on, and then Kevin Smith's daughter, Harley Quinn Smith, she's in the movie as a character, and she had some funny little inside jokes in that kind of made me go. One thing that I was really excited about and had fun doing was there are 3 Batmans in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. 3 actors who have portrayed Batman. And it's a matter of figuring out which one's going to be in it. Though, if you've seen all of Kevin Smith's films, you know which one of them's going to be in. You know which one that'll be. But they do at least say that till later in the film, thank goodness. But So that's kind of fun, especially if you're a Batman fan and a Kevin Smith fan. You kind of get to play. There he is. There he is. And I enjoyed it. It is one of those things. If you've seen all the films, it has moments where it actually will tug at your heartstrings. It has very sweet, excuse me, it has very sweet moments that you wouldn't expect in a film like this. But there are some really sweet moments that kind of break your heart a little bit, and you kind of are like, this was supposed to be a stupid stoner movie. Why am I kind of feeling bad all of a sudden? Because it has moments. Like I said, it does have the character of Jay actually maturing some in this film, and it does kind of surprise you at some points. It has some really great cameos where it's like it. The whole movie is almost like a game. Like, hey, there's so and so. Hey, there's so and so. So if you like looking for cameos and stuff, it is definitely worth the watch. Probably one of the most heartbreaking cameos and one of the sweetest ones comes at the very end of the movie. Like, I think you have to watch some of the ending credits before it pops up, but if you do watch the movie, watch it all the way through, even to the ending credits. The best cameo is, and it's probably the one that if you're a really big fan of just pop culture in general, it's one that might even break your heart a little bit, but it's really sweet. 41 minutes is a long video, but I mean, with everything going on at this point in time of the recording of this video, you can just have me playing in the background and, halfway listening while you do something. Usually the only people who watch these, I'm assuming, are friends and family, which has me a little worried with the family part, but still. This is me signing out. Hope you watch the video.